I'm excited about this because like obviously there's a portion of your history where like I'm riding along in parallel with you. You know, I've seen, you know, I've been around with you for so long, but you know, we always end up having our little offshoots in life and are doing our own things, but we're always
Yeah,
still kind of around. But I love the idea that I get to ask you to kind of give me like the granular look of like what you consider to be your like professional journey as a creative and just somebody that, you know, or just as a professional. It doesn't even need to be as a creative, but like, I don't know, like pick where you think like is like the true beginning of that journey and kind of bring me up to how like in bring me up to how like you are now to like where you've arrived in this moment and like those milestones, the really hard decisions you've had to make, the risks you've had to take, the struggles, like, and that's those, because what I like about this is twofold. A lot of the times we don't get to talk about these things. You know,
yeah,
we kind of gloss over them and like, you know, we just kind of enjoy the time we have with each other. But the other side of the coin is, you know, when people see people that have experienced success or on a path to like a visible path to success, they don't see all that other stuff. And I think that that's like the most important part, is to like let them know that like it wasn't that you woke up one morning and like everything was great. Like the amount of shit that you have to
far.
eat to get to that point is immense, and that should be appreciated. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
funny that you
wherever.
mentioned that. Before I get into my personal stuff, though, I just got a quick story. So I have given a few talks to kids at like, I don't know, in schools, and one was at like an after school program or something where it's like a career day type of thing. And I'm there as like the artist, you know? And every time that I've done it, it's like, it's always been in a way where like the kids get to choose. And when I say kids, it's usually more like teenagers, like 12 to 16 years old, so they're a little bit older, and they're choosing to be in this. Is like, what, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? And some of them pick artists. So like, I, in those situations, generally put the fear of God into them. Because like, I did have a few, you know, teachers and people that I looked up to growing up that warned me about how incredibly difficult it is to be a creative person and to make a living and to not go insane. But even then, I like didn't really respect those warnings as much as I, you know, come to realize that I should have. But yeah, I don't know. It's funny that you mentioned that though, because it
Yeah,
does. You definitely do have to respect that side of it, and most people don't see it.
so as a kid who decided to disregard the warning that your teachers gave you, yeah, what do you see is like, what do you see as like your where did your journey start, and where were like the major moments, you know, positive, negative, that brought you to the point you're at? Because obviously
Yeah,
like you stuck with it, you're still in it, you're still plowing forward with it. So like I just love hearing that story.
yeah. I mean, as far as like, I don't know how I got into, I mean, art was from day one. I don't really know if I could have a starting point to when I started, you know, drawing or whatever. That was really like something that was not pushed on me in like a negative way, but like when I would be babysat at my grandma's house, I would always like, they would stick a stack of paper in front of me and pencils and just go nuts for hours. You know what I mean? So like, there's not really a starting point for that, but I definitely fell in love with music, you know, in my very early teenage years, maybe like, I don't know, even before that, in like the 10 to 11 range is when I really started to take music seriously. And then that show that I mentioned earlier at Club Laga, that was the first time I'd seen music in a club setting, because I had been to Warped Tour, and that already kind of, it was like Warped Tour 1996. That's going to date me a little bit. But that was definitely in itself a turning point. But I remember that show at Laga even more so, specifically just like having that feeling of like, this is where you need to be. Like, these are your people here, you know? So like, that would be a big turning point. Around that time, on the more negative end of things, my father passed away, and that was definitely super formative too. He died of ALS, so like he had been sick my entire life basically. So I had a lot of time to get ready for it, but still something happens whenever, you know, you watch your father pass away that like really either can kind of destroy you or they kick you into gear sort of. And that was a moment for me where I remember distinctly thinking like, this is a sign that like life is short, you know what I mean? You need to really get on it, to, you know, to put it kind of cheesy, but whatever. Like it's absolutely true. You know, I don't even think he was 40 yet when he passed away, but like, you know, I'm close to that age now. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I was just going to say, I feel like that's pretty substantial being where we're at in our age in this moment.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely think about that sometimes. So like that was a super formative moment. And a lot of that stuff happened at the same time. This was like, and so like music and art was definitely an outlet in that situation too. You know, when my father was sick and getting worse and worse, to just have a place where I can go to as like a teenage kid and lose my mind for a little while was good. You know, it's healthy, I think. Same thing goes for BMX and skateboarding and all that stuff. It all sort of tied in, you know, and gave me an outlet through what was really some pretty tragic stuff. So like, you know, I feel like grateful that I had that, because I know people in similar situations that kind of didn't fare so well when they lost a loved one or whatever, because they didn't have that, you know, to have an outlet that, you know, I can kind of rely on it, you know, like I feel a lot of gratitude for that alone. But yeah, I don't know how far you want me to go with turning points, but there are a few more.
Keep going. I mean, take as much time as you want. I want to hear like all of it.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, moving to Miami was also obviously super formative, just getting out of Southwestern Pennsylvania. And like, it wasn't even culture shock really, because I knew what it was going to be. You know, I knew I was moving into like a cultural hub sort of. But just that taught me so much. And then like that city definitely has a lot more, I don't know if I want to say respect, they're a lot more aware of image, you know what I mean? And just how to hype things. So like bringing that back with me and to try to make it a little less icky, because it can be kind of icky down there. You know what I mean? But
I just came back from Vegas, so I understand what icky hype looks like.
Miami and Vegas, I've never been to Vegas, but I've heard it's pretty similar in a lot of ways. It doesn't have a beach, but in a lot of other, it's a city that
it's surrounded by a beach with no water.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's definitely one thing that I did bring back with me that was a good thing. You know, a lot of skills and a lot of friendships and, you know, a lot of good stuff really. But as far as something that I could point to say that I know for sure Miami taught me, it's just how to hype like an event or something, you know. And that's been a large part of my life at this point. So, but yeah, and then moving back here, just reconnecting with your roots is also equally as important as leaving, I think. Not necessarily saying that everybody that moves away should move back, but in some way reconnecting with your roots is really, you know, kind of crucial to development, I think. And then I don't know, beyond that, I mean, once I started getting involved with music here again, I know it was probably the summer of 2012. I was working for the Art Institute and I hated it. I hated that job. I was an admissions guy at the Art Institute. It was terrible. And they laid me off, and I like clicked my heels out the front door and decided like I have this summer where I could really devote myself wholly to doing this stuff for the rest of my life. And it like kind of worked out. I mean, it took more time than that. And I had to do a lot of side jobs and wait tables and all that kind of stuff before I was actually working full time in live music again. But it did work. And I don't know that that would have happened without that summer. And yeah, I think that was the first year I went to Farm Jam Alama too, which shout out to all the Farm Jam friends. Like that place was super crucial. Some of my best friends, a lot of the people that I ended up working with later, some of my best memories, all of it is tied back to that place. And I just love it. That was, also that summer. So like not one particular thing, but that summer was pivotal for sure.
I kind of love like that. I have kind of like my own year. And I would say that probably it's probably the year that I went on tour, that Matt asked me to like, hey, will you come out on tour with us? And there was just like so many things that changed in my life around that, like the amount of lessons learned, the amount like what working hard really meant, like and kind of getting like that like glimpse of like, oh, this is the thing I want. Like this is kind of like these are the like this life, this being able to travel, being able to see stuff like I want to do a lot more of this, which is like kind of my whole ethos now is like I almost don't really care a whole lot of what I do professionally, as long as it affords me the opportunity to like get out of Dodge and see more things. Like I have a whole list of places that I want to see. And but if I'm just going to vacation, I want to go to a beach.
But
there's like those transformative moments, and they're elongated. Like you said, yours was an entire summer, and mine was about
and then some for sure. But
and mine was like 3 months plus being out, just on the road, like basically living like I was homeless for a minute. And but that's that little glimpse, and you're young enough to kind of be like, all right, I took this risk, but like I actually see like it. You have such a hard time like seeing like more than 10 feet in front of your face when you're younger. But then all of a sudden, when like that little path opens up and you see like for miles down the road, and you're like, oh shit, that I gotta go to that. I gotta go.
And I mean, from my view on your life, because like we sort of lost touch for a couple of years there. Like when I was in Florida, we may have spoken a few times here and there, but I didn't see you really until I moved back. And seeing how like you and Skip and everybody else like sort of really took it up to another level at that point. Like when I left, you were amateurs, and when I came back, you all were professionals. You know what I mean? Like it felt like, or at least had the professional drive. You know what I mean? Which is, maybe not the same thing, but I don't know. Either way,
we were hungry to be. It was
a noticeable difference, and I hoped that I carried some of that too. You know what I mean? I remember thinking that in the early Touch Faster days, that like, this is we're serious now.
Right.
God damn it.
Right. And actually mentioning Touch Faster, it kind of that goes back to like we literally put that together under the whole concept of like how like much we missed that community that was the music scene before, like that Laga Days community. And we wanted that back so badly, and we were like, well, like if it's not gonna just come back, like let's try to build it back.
Right. And that's exactly that. That is exactly why we've all been friends for as long as we have, and exactly why why I mentioned earlier that the DIY ethos is so crucial. That's it right there. Like shit, nobody else is doing it. I guess we are then. Right. Rather than just like, oh well, I guess it doesn't happen. Like no, somebody has to. So if nobody else will, I guess we will. And I mean, I was so thrilled to come back and have somebody else that was thinking that way. You know what I mean? Like, because I was ready to go. I had just done like the first like couple of real shows that I had ever been a part of putting together with like multiple live music acts, and we did like a visual art element. And this was all down in Florida, so like to be able to come back thinking like I wasn't expecting much. Like I said, Pittsburgh was dead when I left. It wasn't great, you know, or, you know, maybe shortly after there is where it kind of died off for a minute. But either way, like I wasn't expecting anything like that when I came back. So to immediately, like the week that I came back, Skip hit me up. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, we're doing this. Do you want in? No. Hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And seriously, man, I like that was huge. I mean, yeah.
I don't know if I ever asked you.
Get off my couch. But being depressed, sad about being back home, and actually, you know, made me realize that there's stuff to do back home now. Like there's things happening here, or at least there could be. So, you know,
yeah,
I
yeah,
get that.
Yeah, there was definitely opportunity for sure. And like I said, like I don't think I've ever asked you like what actually took you down to Miami.
Man, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, like warm weather, beaches, bikinis, all that kind of stuff definitely played a part. I'm not gonna lie, I was 18. But I mean, a lot of it had to do with just I wanted to get far from home and experience something different. Like, not that I hated Pittsburgh or anything, but I just was ready to try something new out, and I wanted there to be an ocean nearby. So, you know, those were the two big things. But then I don't know how this even happened, but the school I went to sent like, you know, some mail to my house and like, come to South Florida, here's palm trees and stuff, you know, and I totally bit, I 100% bit. The school offered me like a decent scholarship because it was a private school. It wasn't, you know, a private school out of state. It was pricey, but they gave me a ton of money, and I was, you know, I asked my parents and they were both all about it. And they were, you know, my stepdad had moved away for college too. So I think like that kind of played a role. He knew the positive experience of moving away for a while.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. It wasn't really like I was set on Miami though. That just sort of happened, you know. Again, you know, South Beach and all that kind of stuff, which I ended up hating South Beach is the funny part. And like I hung out in places that were like as far from South Beach as they could be, but that played a part in getting me down there, I think.
So just a little bit of marketing, and then all the other obvious things on top of it: weather, girls.
Yeah, well, dude, this is how it went.
Beach.
So I had chosen that school at that point. Like once they said they were going to give me money, I was like, well, I mean, this is a serious, you know, contender now. But my backup school was Edinburgh. No offense to anybody that went to Edinburgh, but I went up, I toured Edinburgh at like the beginning of March, and there was like 5 feet of snow everywhere, and like it was just awful. And then the very next week, me and my stepdad flew down to Miami to check out Barry, and it was
Didn't
like,
stand a chance.
This isn't even a contest. Are you serious? It's like they're gonna give me money and I get this over 5 feet of snow, and like, nah. Plus, I think Edinburgh didn't have I was going for photo as my major, and Edinburgh had like it was sort of like you have a fine arts degree with like some sort of specification about photo. So it wasn't like directly a photo degree, and that also played like this much of a part.
Yeah, I actually remember that whole thing because I was going for like graphic design, which is still like a really early thing at the time. And not every college actually had the degree for it. So it was like some sort of like a mashup. Like you would be like you would be like in journalism with like a computer science degree or something like that. It was like this weird mashup of like,
I hadn't figured it out yet. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it kind of happened to me at Duquesne. Like I still ended up with a journalism degree. Like it was multimedia and journalism, but I mean, that ended up playing out well in my favor because I found out that I actually really like writing, and I was doing so much blogging and stuff for a portion of my life. But yeah. So beyond Miami though, when did you actually make like the connect with the Rex? How did that all come to play? And then like, how did that develop the way that it did for you?
Well, I guess like in order to answer that, I'd have to give a little bit more of the Touch Faster backstory, you know. So like after you and Skip sort of left, and I kept it going, so it was like a split between round 1 and round 2 Touch Faster. So once round 2 started, I brought in a few other friends to help, Brando and Rachel and like all those people. And we started doing events that were really similar to the ones that I did before I left Florida, where it was like 5 or 6 really good bands and a bunch of visual artists and live art, and like sort of just like a big party. I started doing a series of those here that were quarterly. So we did every solstice and equinox ish. We weren't actually like picky pagans, so it wasn't always right on the actual day, but just somewhere around there. So I started doing those at Shadow Lounge, and then Shadow Lounge closed down. So we were scrambling for an event space, and we tried a few other spots that worked out terribly. And then we landed at the Rex, and it was like immediately, it was like, this is it. These are the people that I want to work with, you know? So we just did them there from then on. And then, you know, so I got to know everybody through that. And through Farm Jam, because it was a similar crowd. There was a lot of carryover between those crowds. So like, yeah. So yeah, basically after like a couple of years of doing that, the spot opened up where the Gray Area was hiring, and Ben hit me up and asked me if I was interested. And it was like immediately, yes, like absolutely. You know, it was, again, back to what I was saying earlier, it's a music venue run by music nerds. It's the best kind of place you could ever work if you're a music nerd, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, it was yes, 100 times yes, let's go. Yeah, and I worked there that was starting in like 2014 through when it closed, or 2013, I don't remember, something like that. Yeah, probably 2014. Yeah, because there was like, again, a couple years that we did the Touch Faster parties and stuff. So yeah, around that, either way.
Right. Well, I mean, it was the funny part is like, you know, I said this earlier, you know, my living room is basically like a small museum of your artwork. But it was always so awesome to like walk by the Rex and like know that like it was so obvious that like the poster that you did, you know, like whatever, you know, whatever show poster you were designing, like I was like, it's definitely Pierce's.
Dude, I'm honestly, I'm really terrible at taking compliments, but my favorite compliment to get is definitely like, I saw this poster and I knew immediately that it was yours. And like, I love that more than anything, because like, I don't know, it tells me that I've got enough of a style that people recognize it, you know what I mean? And yeah, man,
you have
loved it too. I loved walking down Carson. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
like you have like it's like a thumbprint, you know what I mean? Like it's just like it's yours.
And it's strange too, because it's never something that I like consciously thought about. Like I never thought like, this is the style I want to, you know, like a lot of people, I was mimicking the artist that I liked, and it eventually just turned into something that was mine. But yeah, I don't know, hearing that definitely, it's awesome. You know, I loved it. And even now, without the Rex, I've had a few people say like, man, I miss seeing your posters all over the city. And I'm just like, I do too, man.